Hello, I am Ryan Staley, and today I'm going to go over three core things. One, my key takeaways from speaking at a SaaS startup event. Two, my takeaways from interacting with multiple Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies, specifically at Dreamforce. And then three, what's happening in the agent space, specifically as it relates to Salesforce and AgentForce. So I'm going to break down all three of those for those that you don't know me. My name is Ryan Staley. I actually help companies implement AI skill transformation for their organization. And so it was really exciting month for me, shall we say. And I haven't done a solo episode like this in a while. So I had to share with you because there's so many beautiful takeaways. But I am going to compress days and days and days and days of work down into minutes for you. So let's start off with number one. Let's talk about the tech scene, the startups. Okay, so this was a bit of a whirlwind. I went to New York. I flew to what was called the SaaS Open, where I spoke to spoke to multiple SaaS executives, probably about 30 in my room. I also had a roundtable, multiple one-on-one meetings as well. And that was hosted by Nathan Lackup. Really cool. So as I landed, I was late for a CEO poker dinner. I should say poker night, if you will. It had dinner included. So that was awesome. Got to play with a bunch of SaaS founders, won some money. Nothing too crazy there. Then I had my speaking engagement the next day, followed by a dinner with go-to-market executives that was hosted by Carabiner, as well as numerous other providers. On top of that, then had some client meetings the next day and flew back. One of the key takeaways, or I should say some of the key takeaways I had is really, and I love asking these questions when I'm live in front of a big group, but only 1 out of 26 companies could answer this question. And this kind of shocked me actually, because it was basically like, all right, what are your plans or your systematic strategy for implementing AI into your product? And only one raised their hand on that. Basically, nobody had a strategy or a plan for 2025 for their people. Okay. So this hit home. Obviously, that's why those people were at my talk. But it was really interesting because, like, even though it's evolved so much, specifically as it relates to, we can talk about the large language models as it relates to AI, especially with OpenAI's advanced reasoning model coming out, which was Project Q or Strawberry before, which I did a whole separate video that went viral on that. You're going to want to check that out. That's in here as well. But anyways, one of the things was there's a heavy focus on the basics at that conference with AI with only fringe use cases. And then at the same time, instead of operationalizing basically AI operations in their company, holistically, they're only looking at it in point solutions or point places. So that was really interesting to me because I thought that with the size of those organizations, they were probably anywhere from maybe 300K, 200K in revenue, all the way up to 100 million plus, that there would be much, much, much deeper adoption. Okay, so that was my takeaway. So long story short, however, there were some folks that were really on top of this, and you could just tell they were way more advanced when it came to conversation with it. They had tactical use cases that were amazing. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Okay. Fast forward, we're going to go to San Francisco now. I'm flying across the country a couple weeks later to San Francisco, where Dreamforce was. For those of you who don't know Dreamforce, basically it's 45,000 people at this event. Salesforce really pulls out all the stops, and it's pretty incredible. That was my first time being there. One of the things that was interesting was I was booking my flight about a month out, and then when I was booking it, it timed out and I forgot about it, right? So long story short, I booked my flight, but my hotel wasn't booked either. So I ended up booking a hotel room that I thought was solid. It was close. It was near Chinatown. And when I actually went to stay there, I walk up and they had to buzz me in, right? So there's no lobby or anything like that. I'm like, okay, this isn't good. And then once I walk into the lobby-ish, it's kind of a lobby. They give me my key. They told me to go to the 3rd floor. There's only stairs. I get up there. I walk into my room and I see a bunk bed. Yep, that's right. A bunk bed. Like maybe not even like maybe a twin size bunk bed. So something you would get at like a campsite. Nobody was there. Luckily, I was the only person in the room. And then I glance over and the room's pretty small, but there was a sink in there. There's no toilet and no shower. So I was basically acting in a hostile type environment where it's like staying at a hostel in college. And so I was kind of shocked, but I'm like, whatever, I'll tough it out. So I did that. I got a miserable week of sleep, but the insights I got were very measurable. So some of the key takeaways I had, and I'm breaking this into two. I'm going AgentForce is separate because that's kind of their own thing, but I'm talking about the event. So I had multiple meetings with Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies while I was there, which was the whole reason why I was going, just to get exposure to the enterprise, the top end of the enterprise. So I mean, as you know, or may not know, I ran an enterprise sales team. So in the past, I've always worked with large enterprises like that and sold deals that were as big as $650,000 a month in recurring revenue to organizations like that with a team. Grew that from 0 to 30 million. So it was pretty cool to see and interact with them and ask how they're leveraging AI. Now, here's my takeaways, okay? So I gave you the startup kind of viewpoint from New York. Now I'm giving more the enterprise function from San Francisco. So some of the enterprise companies, there's multiple different scenarios. I had one scenario where a company basically had this deeply operationalized and used in one department. Okay, they were also using it on the tech side in different elements, but they were still experimenting. And one of the core elements that I found with really large companies is the default mechanism is protection to start. So as a result, a lot of companies are defaulting company-wide to models like Microsoft Copilot because of the embedded security comfort factor with the CISO or the CIO's office for that. However, what I'm finding is there's no training, really, like systemized training or development of teams within that, which was kind of cool from my perspective, because that's exactly what I do, is I help operationalize AI into people. And so that was super interesting with that. And even though the company had an AI committee and an AI council, they had nothing along the lines of the education process, right? It was more technically based. And I truly believe that a lot of companies are setting their CIOs up to fail when it comes to implementing this, because they're not looking at it separately in terms of a technical side as well as a human capital side. And the biggest shift that I'm seeing is that companies are struggling with this because it's such a big change in terms of, it's not like SaaS, it's completely different, right? And so anyways, that was one of the key takeaways. There was other ones that I spoke to that literally had no training program nor formalized rolling program. They would roll out ChatGPT or Copilot, give it to their people, tell them to work with it, and then just kind of leave it at that, which, I'm sure you're going to get some results from it. However, by taking a systematic approach, you can multiply the output of your entire workforce. If you have 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 people, that's going to move the needle exponentially. And that's when you'll see results like what happened with Amazon, where I think they said it was like they had $350 million in dev time savings. And basically it was 2,400 years of developer work that was saved from implementing their AI development tool. Okay. So that's number two. With that, if you will, in terms of Dreamforce, the other thing I forgot to tell you is I had a middle seat there and a middle seat back on the way to the plane. So it was one of those things where it was a really long week, but it was really, really useful. On top of it, too, I met with numerous other, I went to different go-to-market events. Shout out to my friend EJ over at Sixth Sense. She hosted me for an event they were having, met some great folks there. And at the same time, also finished off, they had a concert with Pink and Imagine Dragons, which was, I've always wanted to see Imagine Dragons. So I absolutely love that. And that was, Dreamforce took care of that. Now, last but not least is AgentForce. Okay, so I'm going to break that down for you really quick. Obviously, this was like 3 days and 1,500 sessions worth of content on AgentForce and what Salesforce is doing specifically as it relates to the AI space. I'm not going to go through all that in nauseum for you, but I'm going to try and give you the compressed Reader's Digest version so you know what's coming. And so what I'm starting to see is like these, ironically, well, not ironically, I'm sure it was by design, but a few other announcements happened within the same week, which I think I might do a separate episode just on it. But effectively, there was HubSpot had inbound, and they were talking about their AI releases within their CRM platform. Obviously, Microsoft has AgentForce. They were doing that. Dharmesh over at HubSpot has agents.ai, which is a platform of like an agent marketplace. And then at the same time, if you look at it, there are also Microsoft release the availability of agents within Copilot. So a lot of talk about agents that week, but specifically as it relates to AgentForce, this is what I saw. So kind of like how Mark Benioff, which I don't know if you remember, but he started off Salesforce really with throwing rocks at the software industry. He used to work at Oracle. I think we might have been back in the Siebel days or right around that, where software was on-prem. And that's what it was viewed as. So he was really big on a campaign about having the X, like the Ghostbusters, like cross through, and it said no software, right? So his new version of that, in my opinion, is no do it yourself, right? Like don't do it yourself AI, right? Let Salesforce do that, and then you can leverage that with all your data. So it's pretty smart with the way he's positioning it. Now the one thing is like I said, I talked to multiple people at the executive level. I talked to product leaders at Salesforce themselves at the VP level and up. So that was pretty cool. And then on top of it too, I've talked to a lot of companies that are implementing. And so there's a few different ways that they're handling it. So Salesforce is handling their AgentForce offering, which are agents. And so what they mean by agents, which I like this actually, they're not just quote unquote co-pilots or assistants. They're effectively autonomous agents. So they could do work for pieces of what you're doing, right? However, there's a couple things that the way they look at it and cut it up, which I think is really smart. Number one is they do verticalization. So they have it by industries with specific use cases for those industries. Number two is they do it by functions. So they have sales, they have service, they have marketing, you name it. So it's functionally aligned with what the organization's doing, right? And then at the same time, the third component of how they're kind of approaching it is they're leveraging RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. And so what that is that's leveraging the data within Salesforce that you put in there to extract and try and provide higher quality answers. The other thing that they're doing is they're having multiple models that you could leverage. So you could leverage Claude, you could leverage ChatGPT, Copilot, or not Copilot, ChatGPT 4.0, and then other models are in there. And then at the same time, they also have this, what's called Atlas. And what Atlas is supposed to look at how you're using it, the results you get, and be optimizing continuously based on the success that you're having. Okay, that sounds beautiful if that's as seamless as it operates. However, general availability was not ready yet at the event. There were some examples of it, which looks solid. At the same time, they showcased a couple customer examples of basically retail use cases with voice interaction. So that was pretty interesting as well. However, like the feedback I was getting from a lot of companies that have worked with Salesforce before was like, this could take a year and a half to roll out. I'll believe it when I see it. So there is some skepticism there, right? I'm open-minded because I haven't been through that before, but that was one of the things that I constantly heard. The other thing I heard in regards to pricing was that it would be $2 per chat for specifically what they have, supposedly like an AI SDR. So it helps try to convert appointments through a chat mechanism. So that's interesting. And then they have multiple other components within there. So here's where I see it's happening. I think this, if it's built right and it operates as advertised, there could be a huge, huge opportunity within there specifically for leveraging agents specific for your organization. And I think that's something that's could be pretty incredible, whether you look at them or you look at HubSpot or you even look at Microsoft's example, because they all have different levels of distribution. So like the number of users and companies that Salesforce has, same with HubSpot, and then same with Microsoft, is pretty insane. So that alone are really interesting wedges that they have specifically for maintaining that. Now, I think there's going to be, it's going to be really interesting, right? So this could automate parts of people's jobs. The other aspect with Salesforce that folks were talking about, and I've heard this with other agents, is it's moving to more consumption model. So we have $2 per chat for the AI SDR, but the other ones with the autonomous agents or other examples were priced a little bit differently. And there's a lot of talk on the internet about this where it's more based on tasks. Okay. And that makes sense because it aligns effectively with how the LLMs charge. They charge based on what's called tokens, which is like 3 to 4 words is considered a token. And so they're operating on that same pricing model. And the good thing about it is it's based on like what people actually, the results they're getting. So I'm really curious to see what the pricing is, because like, here's one of the things that I found, and this is why I'm always skeptical of large language models. I should say companies that are operationalizing and building on top of large language models, is like, they'll have very expensive add-on solutions that basically I could replicate in a prompt. All right. And it's at that low cost point. So it's going to be really interesting to see. Like I said, long story short, like there's a huge opportunity there, but we got to see how it implements. So just to kind of summarize and put a bow on this whole thing, there's multiple angles. Number one, right? Like small tech startups still not fully operationalizing this. If you are in that space, huge opportunity. If you want help, that's something I can help with. Reach out to me via LinkedIn, via email. Tell me you heard me on the show. Number two, if you're a large enterprise, there's organizations that I'm in heavy conversations with. They're in that Fortune 1000 range. If you want a systematic approach to get magnified scale for your team and revenue growth results, like that's for the taking. And you're going to be way further ahead than most of your competition. So that's number two. And number three, really interesting to see how AgentForce plays out with the pricing model, with the implementation, and with the use cases. You're going to see me digging into a lot of these different examples and really working through it and seeing like what has the right quality versus what's like all rhetoric, right? And so it was an awesome experience. I also saw Jensen Huang from NVIDIA and Mark Benioff talk to each other, was blown away. Mark Benioff does a great job speaking, so very charismatic. If you've not seen him, check it out. So anyways, I am going to do another episode on this, and I'm going to break down into some other areas in agents and other, so look for it. But just want to say thanks for joining me today. It was awesome to share this with you in my journey, because it was a hell of a journey over the last month. But have a good one. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you on the next episode or video.